Good morning. Today is July 2nd, and you've joined the Kubeflow community call. This call is governed by the Kubeflow Code of Conduct, and it is being recorded. So, July 2nd, 2024, we have our agenda. Let's get back up to the top of the meeting notes and see if there's anybody actually that wants to introduce themselves before we get started. Anybody new that wants to say hello? Anybody from a Google Summer of Code that wants to introduce themselves? Anything like that? Any new topics that aren't on the agenda? Okay, feel free to bring topics in as we go along. We're going to go with our normal set of things to do, starting with the release update. Ricardo, are you here? Would you like to walk us through the release update?
Yeah, sure, Josh. So just a quick update. Last week we released our Kubeflow 1.9 release candidate 2. It's the last release candidate before the final release that we're scheduling to July 22nd. What's missing to reach final? We're making changes on the documentation, especially on the Kubeflow pipelines one. We are waiting for the other working groups to give us an SDK to get their final releases for their components. And we're finishing some final touches in the manifest before reaching final. I'm assuming that this is not a big thing. And I believe we're good to go with sticking to the July 22nd release date for final. One other topic here is that we got some distributions who are who replied to us and gave us some ACK or LGTM on how the RC2 release looks good or not. Overall, all the issues we found were pretty simple. They are already fixed, or they are just misconfigurations on the manifest for their given distributions. So I'm assuming that we're good to go with moving to final when we get all the other working groups to cut their final releases on their components. One last topic is that we're still preparing the draft and the slide deck for highlighting the new features within the Kubeflow 1.9 release. We're about to go with another round of reviews in the draft doc, and I still need people from the working groups to help me with the slide deck. We're still lacking a lot of content from other working groups there. So please, if you have some time to give a final review to the blog post draft doc, take some more minutes to also see the slide deck and fill up with some important information about your given working group. I believe that's that. So if anyone have any questions, comments, feel free to chime in.
Is
Yeah,
the
I mean, there are
Spark?
some.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go first.
I was just wondering, is the Spark operator included by default in the manifest install?
That's a
Yeah,
good point, Josh.
we don't even yet have the manifest. We have the manifest for model registry, but it's not enabled by default. And the Spark operator is not even merged into the Kubeflow/manifest repository. There's no synchronization there.
Okay.
That's correct. We are not planning to bring Spark Operator on 1.9 yet. We're planning for the next release, 1.10.
Good. Okay.
I mean, there's one small issue for the documentation leads. on how to add, because the way how passwords for users are added has changed. And I think a small thing regarding training operator network policies, both are being, I'm working on both and also getting help from other people, I hope. But nothing, we should definitely get this done until July 22nd.
Awesome. Thank you for your updates, Julius. Alrighty, back to you, Josh.
Yeah, one last question. Did any
Yeah.
of the Jupyter Notebook or the notebook images get updated in this release?
I mean, I
Uh,
pushed.
Go ahead, Julius.
Okay, yeah. It's not in the RC.2, but it's in a 1.9 branch. So Kubeflow/Kubeflow 1.9.0 RC1 has been I synchronized it into the manifest repository, but it didn't make it into RC2, but it's in a 1.9 branch. So if people are using that branch anyway to test Kubeflow, they have the updated images.
Perfect. Okay, good stuff. Good stuff. All right. Anything else on 1.9?
No, that's just Josh.
So great job, Ricardo, keeping everybody in line here. We're in the home stretch. Ricardo needs help from all the working groups and all the distributions to check in. I know y'all have been doing a great job. But let's finish up. I know we got a couple more rounds to go. So Ricardo, just so I understand, we're gonna have an RC, we have RC2. Are we gonna have an RC3 or are we just gonna go to final? And when do you think the final version would be?
No, our plan is go final directly from RC2 because
Okay.
the changes we have in manifest aren't so critical in a way that it needs another release candidate. So we decided to go directly from RC2 to final, just fixing some those small changes in manifest.
And the final is gonna be July 2 or before?
Our hard deadline will be July 22nd, but
Yeah.
if we have everything set for releasing final earlier than this date, we'll try to do this.
Okay, fantastic. Good stuff. Fantastic. Everyone give applause. You know, we'll have more applause. Okay, good job. I think that's it for 1.9. We definitely need to understand the benefits of 1.9, start to promote those, be clear and concise on a lot of the things that are the very top benefits. You know, a lot of this is drawing people in, have them take a look at it, then learn more. They can't learn it all in one session. There's just a lot of stuff. I think the blog post is like 2,200 words right now. So that just shows you how much work the community is doing. That's a lot of explanation. And it's, you know, that's the highlights. So we're doing a lot. So good stuff. We want to move on to the main agenda. I think we have an item here from Julius. Is this you here? Merge security and manifest meeting into platform meeting.
Yes, actually the PR is from Ricardo, but it is from me, and yeah, I want to move forward there somehow. And I think I also have Andrew in the call. Maybe he can also chime in on that topic. Andre, sorry, not Andrew.
Sorry, what was the topic?
Merging of the calendar entries for the security meeting and the manifest meeting into the Kubeflow platform meeting, where of course also the distributions are welcome. Yeah, this PR about merging it, the one created by Ricardo.
Yeah, I don't have any objections to not merge this, especially since you indicate this is manifest plus security. Josh, do you know any concerns from your side?
I don't have so many concerns. I just want to make sure that we're communicating to the community that we're going to have a change, right? And in the structure. And I think we've been pretty good about being consistent about terminology. But let's just take a second right now and reinforce the split and the platform kind of, purpose, the name of the platform name, if we could. Andre, I know you've been pushing this, but could you perhaps just give a 1 minute, 2 minute, like why platform and what's in platform versus what's in notebook going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been discussing this for almost like 8 months since KubeCon in Chicago last year. So, I mean, if we as a community don't like the platform name, we can always rename it and improve it. But I think the main idea is to explain what we as a community doing, right? And what are the differences between, stitching all the pieces together and deploying standalone Kubeflow components. So the main problem that we have right now, at least from my perspective, that's our community and the users don't really understand what is Kubeflow. And we try to explain that Kubeflow, it's not only the ability to deploy all the components together, but also the ability to use them standalone. And like the wording of platform is just when basically we as a community stitching all the pieces together and give you, the minimal product that you can use in your MLOps platform, we call this Kubeflow platform, right? Where all of the core components are, handling together all in addition to all the infrastructure pieces that is required to have a minimal available product to run, right? So mostly why we're merging these meetings together, because Julius was part of the manifest for a very long time. And also, Julius, you were driving the effort around security. And I guess since it affects all the components, we try to have them in a unified place. But eventually moving forward, I mean, if we as a community and the users will explain this, hey, this is actually much worse compared to what we have before. When we have like, Kubeflow repo, like an ability to just install Kubeflow from the platform, from the manifest, we can always improve, right? But I guess like we just want to make clear for users what we are doing and what are the value, right? What is the value for what we're doing?
I think most of the stuff is also now already merged to the documentation. So if you go to get started with Kubeflow and installation, you see already a lot of stuff about it and documentation and explanation. The second thing is you usually, over the last 2 years or so, it became clear you cannot really separate security and manifest. That's another thing. Yeah. And it's
Ricardo, go ahead.
really-
Yeah. Mhm.
Oh, go ahead, Ricardo. I think you raised your hand.
Yeah, just a quick thing. I believe one last part we need to do for keeping this new work group clear to all of the users is to make changes in the community repo about the description of the new platform working group. We are now under the manifest working group. I don't see there is security working group, but I believe that will be the last gap that will tie everything what we're doing for merging security and manifest and renaming into platform working group.
Yeah, independent of renaming it there, the question is, I'm totally fine with all of that. And at the moment, I'm always announcing, yes, sorry, the security team call, we're not using it. Please join the other one. My question is just, can we merge the calendar entry? And you can change also the other documentation about working groups and so on. I'm just want people being seeing that in the Kubeflow community calendar such that they can join the meeting and don't go to the wrong meeting, which isn't happening anymore.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I think just my 2 cents on that. I think we should start with merging this PR so we can get the calendar invites proper set for the platform, the new platform working group meeting. But it should be like right after merging this PR, we need to get more clarification for the community users that this new working group has just arisen as part of the merge between security and manifest, and explain in details what this new platform working group should be part of. What are the main responsibilities of this new working group? So starting with the security and manifest, passing through the platform components that we plan to split under the Kubeflow repo, and all of the actions we want to bring to this new working group. Does it make sense?
Yes. So from my perspective, what will be super helpful, and I don't know how we can do it to, I mean, hear what users actually think today, right? Because like we're speaking a lot about this, right? We're making our own assumption of what we believe is right for the user. But like I mean, I know we're doing like a regular survey every year, but I just, maybe before the next KubeCon, I hope we can make this split. I hope we can establish, the Kubeflow platform, Kubeflow standalone components, and ask, our users, like, did you make it more clear for them compared to what we have, 2 years ago? And what should be our next steps there, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I really appreciate the work of the team and understand how hard this was. I think we used Kubeflow repo as kind of a dumping ground. And I think that, having this platform actually is some really important core value that users and administrators need to understand is a differentiation of Kubeflow. Because this often is, in my impression, where a lot of the really hard enterprise administration type functionality occurs. And so to me, we need fewer meetings, we need more overlap between people that are contributors. And I think putting these all in together, because they're so interconnected in a lot of ways, is a very valuable. And then having notebooks or workspaces, whatever that becomes, out on its own and being able to innovate without having being dragged down by platform. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Just, I think a lot of people look at the functionalities of, the notebooks and the tuning and the training and the pipelines. They don't really get that the platform is something that really differentiates Kubeflow. And I think having this platform, it really does highlight why we're different than a lot of other programs, projects that didn't start with that Kubernetes native. It makes it more complicated. It makes it more advanced, but it gives you a lot more functionality, functions and isolation, in particular functions like that I think are really valuable. So anyway, I'm off my soapbox. Anything else on this? What do we need to do? Just LGTM? Where are we at on this?
I think I got LGTMs from Kimonas, the other manifest working group lead, and some other people. What we need is one of the approvers. So someone to approve this PR.
Reverse. Okay. Got it. All right, let's keep moving on. Thank you, Julius, for pushing this forward. And Andre, I know you guys and Matthew, everyone has, commented, provided good insights. GitHub Enterprise account for Kubeflow.org. Ricardo.
Yeah, I was about to bring that discussion to the KST meeting, but I believe for the next 2 weeks you cannot meet because of the holidays in the US. So I decided to bring in here just to see if we can have a final decision about what to do with the open ticket to give Kubeflow GitHub Arc the enterprise account for GitHub. Um, just a reminder that the ticket guy asked to grant him access with admin privileges to the to the Kubeflow GitHub Arc, so he can enable the enterprise account for us. So what I need is some guidance. What would be the procedure to grant him access with admin privileges to the Kubeflow org? If there's a way to do this.
So I assume, what is this? This is only few people have admin access to the enterprise or to the GitHub for Kubeflow, and we need somebody with that to provide that to the CNCF representative, and we're not getting that done.
That's correct.
Okay, so is that a Google person that or is there somebody else now that can do this?
I honestly, I have no idea. I believe the Google team could be beneficial here because they already have admin access to the Kubeflow GitHub org, right? But in case we can have a timely response from the Google team, is there anyone else who could grant access to the CNCF guy?
Andre, do you remember anybody? I think it may be James Liu that we'll need to go to. I don't know.
I think we said this before. We have admin access for 2 persons from Linux Foundation. I mean, why this doesn't work to give us the access? Can they ask Chris to enable this for us?
Sorry, what was the name?
So Chris and Linux Foundation account has the admin access for our repo, right? So these guys has admin access.
So, okay, so if I understand, your suggestion is to reach out to the ticket and say that there is already 2 representatives from CNCF with admin access to the GitHub org, and
Yep.
they can do this for us.
Yeah, can I just use this account to enable it? The Linux Foundation
Okay.
official GitHub account, right?
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good start. I'll find out which are the accounts already have admin access to the GitHub org, and I'll ask in the CNCF ticket if with just these accounts we can move forward with the enabling enterprise account for Kubeflow GitHub org.
Yeah, thank you, Ricardo. Thank you.
All right, so we got a path at least identified for that one. It's okay to move on. I saw some comments on using Ubuntu images as the base images. I guess that is what, a proposal that might be something we looked at 1.9. Was there something that we need to, I think there's an open PR on this or something to this effect. Is there some decision that needs to be made in some time frame that we can kind of push this along one way or another?
I mean, it's about reducing the number of CVEs because Ubuntu is willing to sponsor this to some degree or provide what they have internally in their distribution also upstream as well. There is some pushback from different persons who want to go either use Red Hat based or Red Hat originated or Red Hat related images or distroless images. So the plan at the moment is to just use it for images which are more or less abandoned. For example, the case of Models Web Application wasn't that well maintained. It's currently on Debian, and this could be a good candidate, to reduce the amount of CVEs. I mean, you've seen the CVE numbers in the blog post. I've provided a table there per working group. So yeah, I think that's the first step, and everything else in general for the working group, the leads have to decide, the KC has to decide. Yeah.
Okay. How do I spell this? Why am I spelling this wrong? So I understand there's a bunch of reasons why people would have concerns about this, right? Especially people that make Linux images. I also appreciate the fact that we have been dinged a lot about security in public, and even the chief software officer of the Air Force, took Kubeflow to task about the number of CVEs that we have open. So, I mean, there's got to be a cost benefit analysis of this. I am struggling. I feel like this is one path forward, and if Canonical is and the Ubuntu team is willing to help support this, at least the starting place. But I really like that, especially the folks from Red Hat or whomever, if they have serious concerns about this, they need to either voice those concerns and show up with some resources to help with it as an alternative or propose an alternative. I think we have to make a decision on this, is I guess my point. And I'm leaning forward to saying this isn't perfect, but we've got to move forward. That's kind of my take on it. How do we get this? How do we get this to go ahead? There's two participants. Whoever wants to go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I
So
didn't
can you
raise
go
my hand,
first?
so go first.
Mattia, can you go first?
Yeah, sure. Just because maybe actually it's the easier comment. If I understand correctly from Julius, these sort of like impacts on sort of the older images. What I can see, at least from the registry, we're using UB8. Actually, it's like we keeping that up to date because we have in the same force of say, we have a department that are sort of like pushing us to make sure that we are always using the most I would say updated images because of the same reasons. So CVEs that are found that may be found in the container images. So if I understand correctly, let's say that model registry can continue to use the OBI images. I don't see any problem. But of course, I'm speaking only for the model registry boundaries based on the understanding that what I'm hearing from Julius is that this is more impacting on other working groups. For the model registry working group, we are keeping that those base images updated. So in case that I missed on anything, please let me know because in that case, I might have missed on something. Thank you.
So
Ricardo?
yeah, thank you. I think one of the things we still need to figure out about the using other images is that one of the remaining features across working groups under Kubeflow is to support ARM64 images. I don't know whether Ubuntu or Red Hat have any support for ARM64 architecture. And there's also we've been tasked to have some other processors like PowerPC and you know I think given those demands, I'm unsure that we should already starting with looking at distroless or specific distro or going with the full support for the ARM64 processors. Yes, Andrea?
Yeah, thank you, Ricardo. I did want to raise that we do, in generally, Ubuntu works with all the silicon vendors and different architecture types, including ARM64. So that would not be a challenge. I do think that is worth in the PR that we've been talking about to try to jointly document the requirements such that we are all aligned, but that would not be a blocker. One other thing that I would like to raise in terms of concerns is also that at the moment Kubeflow runs on a lot of images that are out of support, that are not being maintained when it comes to the OS, which is really concerning, and I do see people asking about that. So it's not just the vulnerabilities, but also lack of maintainability sometimes. I remember at some point I made an analysis of that. That's how I have those. I'm happy to look back for it and share it if anyone is interested. Thank you.
Julius?
Yeah, Andrea, we have automatic scanning with Trivi now for the CVE. So if you just go to kubeflow/manifest GitHub Actions and check the Trivi ones, you will get up-to-date CVE numbers and the list of images. And I think in the end, I mean, personally, I use Fedora, so there's so many options, but in the end, probably depends on how much effort people want to put into fixing the CVE. So if someone steps up and, for example, solves the problems with the case of Models Web App, which is probably canonical in this case, and then maybe Red Hat steps up at the model registry or at another repository, I'm totally fine with having multiple vendors there, as long as they keep the images up to date. And I think as soon as images are not maintained anymore, that's a good opportunity to switch this image over, such that any of the big vendors here, Canonical, Red Hat, whoever else, can maintain them. But I wouldn't say we have to go explicitly for one of those two options.
I do want to add something to this, Julius, and I'm not wearing my canonical hat here, but rather an open source member. And looking at other open source projects, they often started with one distribution and then they extended to more. And OpenStack can be an interesting example for that. They do have images not just for Ubuntu, but they have them for Ubuntu, they had them for Fedora, and I think they also have them for Debian. But I know that initially they started with one, and then as the project grew and it evolved and the community grew, you can always add them. And then in the moment when one of the distributions stops maintaining them, then of course the community can make decisions as well.
Yeah, so in the end, the idea is more of a meritocracy, see who helps and give them the permission to maintain the option to maintain the image.
And what does Kubeflow pipelines use?
They actually are mostly distroless, I think. So the third option. Or Google distroless. I think they have their own distroless, let's call it distroless distribution.
Yeah. So, I mean, the problem that I see here is the working groups often are led by a particular contributor, vendor, whatever, who may have a vested interest in having a particular Linux version. And this is going to be very difficult to get everyone to agree.
I mean, based on images that I've seen, probably um, workbenches, notebooks, and so on, or what was previously in Kubeflow/Kubeflow, it's mostly Debian based, so a good candidate for Ubuntu, a model registry for Red Hat, maybe, I'm not sure about Spark Operator and the other repositories. Google will definitely stay on distroless. I doubt that they will accept changing into anything else because of their internal Google policies. So probably it will be divided up in the end somehow. But maybe we can choose which kind of base images we as community want to allow, at least for the stuff we develop on our own. So not Istio or Cert Manager, but the stuff we develop on our own. And maybe we can specify, well, our images should be based on Ubuntu or CentOS or UB8 or whatever, and at least provide a list on what we should standardize.
So how do other communities that have this base image problem handle it? The CVE using a base image, right? Because as Josh said, there are different vendors here with different supported OS images. So how do other communities address this problem? When I am a user and I just want a generic vanilla deployment before I'm pushed towards a distribution.
Yeah, I was going to say the same, Chase. And I do believe that my understanding is that other communities will stay as neutral as possible and give the distributions their own ways to provide their images with their own distribution or their own OS images. But I think it worth asking the other communities how they handle if they are using distroless images and how they figure out a way to reduce the number of CDs and make their images more secure and stable at some point.
Right, because the big concern for us is we want new contributors or end users to be able to deploy Kubeflow in their environments and experiment without a high level of risk, without any non-negotiable CVEs. So maybe, I mean, we get to decide as a community that threshold, and maybe that makes sense to go figure out what the threshold is for CVEs. But again, we just can't, unless we're very, very transparent and say, hey, we have no guarantees on CVEs and push people to distros. There is a barrier. We are opening up our end users to risk if we just say, hey, download these unsupported images. We just need to be at least very transparent so that if someone does install this in their environments, they understand what they're getting themselves into and won't accidentally get flagged or get, their own bumps and bruises for using Kubeflow.
Okay, we've talked about this a bit. I think we've got good feedback in. I think the KSC members will have to consume this a bit, but I think there's going to be more discussion. One of the things that I would like to figure out in this community is some way where we run into these vexing problems that we can find some solution, whether it's splitting the baby or whatever, and move on, right? So we don't leave things kind of open for so long, because anybody who has worked on these projects and has gone back to their company and said, hey, if I think I can get this done, you're using your political capital, and you line up all the resources, and then we as a community don't do anything for 6 months, it's very hard on the people who have done all the research and all the effort. So somehow we have to do a better job of making decisions. On the other side, the folks that are on the wrong side of the decision, or the decision doesn't go their way, you know, at some point have to accept that we have to push forward, right? So I don't know exactly what the right answer is here. I think I'm suspecting that Google will continue with distroless, so there's no way that we're going to be able to ever have just Ubuntu. And I think that the fact that Red Hat has been such a good partner of adding new stuff, I want to give them the leeway and flexibility to continue forward. But, you know, the value of getting this somehow more consistent sounds right to me. But maybe I'm thinking that it's not as big a deal as it is, right? That if there are different Linux distributions, it's not that big a deal. I don't know. As long as they're kept up to date. All right, let's revisit this one. Sorry, again, pontificating. CNCF marketing support for Kubeflow. Look, two things that, you know, we talk a lot of the innards just like we do about Kubeflow and stuff like that, but we don't talk about as much about how we actually get more marketing outreach. I guess that's the marketing team that needs to do that, but you know, trying to get the CNCF to help us. I mean, that was one of the major reasons why we joined the CNCF, is to use their muscle. Right. So we do have an open ticket here. I just wanted to let the community know we're going to have some of those folks come in and talk to us. We'll find out what they have to say. I'm sure they're piggybacking on them and using them, especially if we're going to use them in 1.9 to amplify the message, probably comes with some form of tax or some form of loss of control. That's fine with me. I'm just letting people know that, you know, anytime you bring in Big Brother's going to tell you something, right? Usually comes, and maybe it's all, you know, fine, but we'll see. All right. Is the new Zoom bridge usable? Julius, is this because OnePass is giving you a problem, or is it something else?
Yes, I was just wondering. I got the access to one password and maybe other working group leads as well, but I cannot see the Zoom credentials there. So, and I also don't know, do we have a timeline to migrate to the new Zoom bridge? What's the status there, just in general?
So I have a little bit of trouble with the one password. I get it to work, but there might be other folks. I think Andre was zip. He was really good with it. There might be other people that have one password access and, you know, no problem.
Yeah, I think Julius, it should be straightforward. Just ask Matthew to give you an access for the password, and you should be able to see the password there.
Whom should I ask?
It's Matthew. Matthew is the owner of this account.
Okay.
Julius, can you get into one password?
Yes, you added me, Josh, and I created an account, and I can see that it's the account for the Zoom stuff, but I just cannot access the Zoom bridge credential.
Yeah, I'm not sure I think you're supposed to just access the CNCF Zoom bridge. It's kind of instead of going into it now, maybe perhaps we can do you can walk me through, we can do a Zoom or something, and you can show me what's going on. Or I can show you how I do it.
Yeah, this would help a lot.
Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. Okay, but it works for me now. You know, I think one of the top things that has been happening in the industry is this, you know, sucking sound towards LLMs. And, you know, if you just look in the investment of all the money and time and effort that's going towards the NVIDIA's rise to fame, we do need to talk about this in the meetings. And, you know, in 1.9, we do have the LLM API. And, you know, I think the abstraction of providing all the great Kubernetes management improvements and abstracting that is somehow something we need to talk about more in the community, especially with workflows and use cases and ways that users can take advantage of this powerful Pythonic native interface. For those folks that are, there may be more powerful features that are coming out in 1.9. And I'm glad to give them air too, but in this particular, I'm just wondering if the folks that worked on the LLM API, is there, you know, is there something that we can do to kind of help the community get started here? Are we pointing out, here's a use case, here's a training, you know, here's a tutorial, here's a quick use flow, workflow? Is there something we should be telling people?
I think also Kserve now has native support to some degree for serving large language models. This could also be interesting, not just Kserve.
So, okay, a couple of things. So I've been involved in the old working groups, which is serving batch, you know, what is it else? Device management in Kubernetes. There are several, you know, activities which are happening right now, right? So Kserve, I know they've been right now looking for, I think they call Cloud Native LLM Gateway. So basically, I can share some design docs with you if you're interested, but the idea is to provide a quick access to all foundational models and serve them on the cloud. Additionally, Serving Working Group recently presented the design doc for blueprints, which basically the idea of kind of like some sort of blueprint for ML engineers to quickly serve the large language models for any kind of, you know, large models you have on the Kubernetes cluster, reusing the Kubernetes native primitives. And also from training operator side, we've been working on this, you know, V2 APIs, and I can share the design doc here. So we've been working this since April this year to kind of like restructure how API for training and fine tuning might look like. And there, like I think we can have a good. So first of all, the infrastructure to train a fine tune model is already there. So we can already simply train any, you know, model at any scale, and we can simply use the infrastructure which is right now, which we have right now in the training operator with enough like fault tolerance and other capabilities like elasticity. So right now, like the whole idea of just to provide the simple interfaces for data scientists and ML engineers to quickly fine-tune foundational models. So we have a couple of ideas there how the new API might look like, but I think like similar, like what I mentioned before for the serving side, we want to provide some sort of the list of the training runtimes and maybe even like LLM training runtimes when users can just, you know, quickly iterate on multiple like models, whether it's, you know, Gamma, Llama, or anything else from, you know, from Hugging Face or any other registry, and quickly fine tune them on a multiple workers by reusing the Kubernetes native primitives. So please take a look at this proposal, and I can also share some proposals from the serving side as well. But I think it would be really nice to start this foundation around how Kubeflow actually help people to do, you know, like LLM training, fine tuning, or LLM serving. We just need to provide a similar way because, like, for years we've been struggling with different personas we work with, right? You know, data scientist persona, SRE persona, MLOps engineer persona, right? How to again fit everyone? It's not an easy task, right?
Right. So okay. So I think
yeah,
what we need to do here is, Andre, and you and I can spend some time, is we need to have an initial kind of, and this is, we were talking about maybe having an outreach committee built here, but having why does a platform like high level, why would something like Kubeflow develop an LLM API, right? What's the benefit of just developing this thing we call an LLM API and then distilling it into the way we designed it, how we designed it to suit that objective of developing the LLM API in the first place, and then eventually bring people into the weeds, into integrations. I think broadcasting that we have this, and there's some purposes behind why we built it from a business and machine learning and career objectives, and then getting into the nitty gritty. I think that's where we need to start, because if we just throw people into the white paper, that's similar to, pointing people towards your academic paper, right? We want to be able to bring people along for the ride, and we can start generic and then slowly allow them to dig deeper. But if we start deep, we might lose people. And also it'll be a much lower barrier to kind of advertising what we've done and built, and a quicker time to value for people to understand like what this really is.
Yeah, I mean, I know that Stefano was driving this idea of, of explanation why we do this feature. So the feature that we introduced in 1.9 is like, it's very simple thing, like, just abstract the ability for the data scientists to quickly get like fine-tune their own models using the Python APIs. But mostly like, so the problem is like with why, like, first of all, we need to build something, right? So I think like the problem is sometimes users probably don't really understand what they want, especially how to run these ML tools on Kubernetes. And first of all, we just need to show them our opinionated way of how these things needs to be run, some sort of reference architecture, right? And this is like hard problem to solve because, again, as I mentioned before, people who build ML frameworks, they usually don't really familiar with Kubernetes, concepts. But again, like I think since we kind of like establish us as a bridge between ML ecosystem and Kubernetes ecosystem, and if we make it more kind of native with existing landscape, what's happening around the ML industry, we will be in a good position ourselves for the users, at least like what I can how I can see here. But I mean, to understand this, it requires for us as a community to attend all these working groups, right, on the Kubernetes side and other sides, right, which are happening right now.
Well, I would argue the Kubernetes side is the engine, and I think we want to be talking to the drivers. So we built an LLM API so you can train and develop LLMs using machine learning frameworks, and then yes, we maybe use our unified training operator. We use Kubeflow pipelines, but I think we just talk about the components we leverage, but we're really in service of helping you build APIs, and they just want to see a DAG, right? They don't want to see or really know. In fact, if you talk, there's a Kubeflow summit 2 years ago where a lot of the feedback was we try to hide the Kubernetes from our end users, right? So I think we start with the end users. How do we make it easier for you to build LLMs quicker? And then we say, hey, if you want to check under the hood, here's the links. Maybe we have separate blogs if we see demand for that. But I think we really just need to start at the experience at the glass and the value that it gets you. And then the power of Kubernetes is a deeper dive. I don't think we start with Kubernetes.
This is always the problem because there's, in any of these projects, especially somebody who's got a Kubernetes platform team, and then they build on top of that some type of machine learning platform, and then you have your applications that sit on top of that. Who do you talk to? Right? And where do you engage, and how deeply do you engage? And
Totally.
if you're talking to the data scientist about Kubernetes, you probably lost them. And if you're talking to the platform guy about why the LLM, why is fine tuning so expensive, so difficult?
Right.
It's almost like there's multiple messages and multiple places to engage. I think that part of our problem is we're trying to have one message to go across at least two different types of people, personas.
Right. And I think that, if we talk from how you'd engage with an end user, you'd first discuss what the end user is trying to do for an outcome. And then, that end user, because if a platform engineer is supporting a platform, the only reason that supporting that platform benefits them, and the reason they want to know all the knobs to turn, is because something upstream in them is providing value for their end users. So starting with, hey, you want to build an LLM These are why we see the demand for the LLMs. This is how we abstract away the building of the LLM. And then once someone says, you know what, this will improve my ability to build an LLM, I can at least sell to the organization that this will help me scale, fail, whatever, based on kind of these outcomes that we're targeting. Then we can say, cool, okay, well, what's the how? How does this actually work? Because that won't matter unless what's upstream is valuable, right? Who cares how the engine runs if the car can't help me win the race?
How many users actually are fine-tuning LLMs now? What do you think the percentage of LLM users are actually fine-tuning them?
So the majority of of ML tasks right now, it's around LLM. All these new AI startups, which mean finally they're just doing fine tuning because they just don't have resources to train their own large models, right? That is why the landscape kind of switched towards LLM ops, right? Like all these operational things which needs to be built around the already kind of pre-created models by large enterprises, where it is OpenAI or Facebook or any other large Google, right? Enterprises which actually publish their open source models, right? No, OpenAI doesn't really publish it, but other folks are publishing. So that is why right now there are so many tools around LLM type of operation. Even if you take a look in VLLM or any other sort of the framework which right now been established to like solve the problem. The thing is like it is not the end of the world, right? Yes, right now most of the people are doing fine tuning, but we still have some sort of the customers who just maybe have some sort of other use cases, right? Which don't do fine tuning, right? How the question is like, we as a community, who we want to serve first, right? And what should be our charter, right?
Right.
In the broader
Kind
world.
of like the way you started that conversation, which was there's a lot of startups. And I think that like a large enterprise customer who's using OpenAI just to do some chat conversational thing may not need fine tuning, but startups who are trying to add value, perhaps they are, trying to develop some IP. And what I'm trying to figure out is how do we get to that subsegment there? So we're targeting those people who have the muscle that understand Kubernetes and the value of that understand Kubeflow, and now they see this API that's come up, right? And we get them engaged with it.
I agree. And if we're on a slide with other frameworks that train APIs, right? So someone's trying to say, here's the landscape for LLM training. What's our advantage? Here, it all depends, but here's when Kubeflow makes sense, and having an opinion on this is why Kubeflow versus these other things trying to train LLMs. Is it because we're a complete solution? Is it because we scale better? Is it because we're more resilient? Really understanding that, and that's probably goes into your experience, Andre, with all the pitfalls you can run into training LLMs and how we help you avoid them. I think that's where we need to start, and then talk about the technical details.
And just to be honest, like Kubernetes is still not yet fully democratized for machine learning in general. That is why not all of the people use Kubernetes heavily, right? Like many people use Slurm, for example, right? Many people just directly use bare metal with MPI because Kubernetes is not the right thing for them, right? It's slowly kind of, compared to like 2018, for example, when we started Kubeflow, right? Kubernetes was even worse for machine learning. Right now, I can see, it became much better compared to, previous years. And, like, I guess like Kubeflow can even more democratize Kubernetes because some of the things will be always out of scope of the Kubernetes by itself, right? Because we can always push all of our changes to the upstream, right? But probably it's not like the charter of the Kubernetes as a project, right?
True. So I think we just need to build that whitelist of when do we make sense, right? Because like we can make a million reasons, we can poke holes in things all day, but hey, if you're looking to do X, Y, Z, we really make sense for Kubeflow, for building an LLM, right? Here's what you need to do this in production, or maybe we're saying we're not a production, whatever we say, we should just get out there and iterate and see what demand we generate starting from that opinion and if we need to scale.
So we're over time. And I think this is a very good conversation. I'd like to give more light to these type of conversations earlier in the community meeting. But in particular, we have a decision to make about a community as we start to promote 1.9. And I love the model registry. I like the Spark operator. I like a lot of the things, the Tecton in, you know, in 1.9, becoming a first-class citizen, the whole thing. I still got to believe that if all the stuff I've read on the blog post, it looks like the LLM API, again, comes to the top. But I also think that, kind of the Chase's point, I think we're going to have to be more pinpointed about who we're talking to and what actual next step we want them to go and do if they're going to invest a little more time. Because whatever that link is that we're going to give them, which is going to be in the first paragraph, it's got to add value to the people that we want to get engaged. And, you know, in the past, and I've written a lot of these blog posts, we've just dumped a lot of stuff up and said, okay, guys, go figure it out. But I think, you know, in this chance where it would help to put some thought into what comes first in the blog post and what is that first step that we want them to go and do. And is that going to drive more users or more contributors or whatever, right? So anyway, stuff to think about. You guys see that the blog post is there. Glad if people disagree and want to override or you know, want to my opinions are just one person's opinion. So feel free to, you got something better, bring it up. But the blog post is coming. It's got to get fixed up in the next 10 days if we're going to get it out on the 22nd. So help with good ideas. Okay, we're 5 minutes over. Anything else anybody wants to say? We got some of this stuff in here. If people have good ideas for, you know, the next meeting that are less administrative and more use case, you know, please drop them in here and let's.
Yeah, I think just like we have this issue already opened, right? So we need to do this change relatively soon in terms of the changing this meeting schedule, right? And maybe move them to 1 week for office hours, 1 week for use cases plus user discussions. I know that Francisco is out of office right now, but maybe, you know, like other volunteers, maybe you, Chase, or someone else who can drive some, you know, use case meetings. We can, you know, maybe change some. We can maybe mid-July or August. So the format will be slightly more interesting for end users, right?
Yeah, let's have that discussion. I mean, I would love to work with, especially someone, you know, I know there's a skill set in taking very highly technical things and getting out of the weeds and talking to end users. So if there's anyone who has worked with these things and wants to help us broadcast better and discuss the why mapping to the how, I'm really happy to support that in whatever way is possible.
And just one last thing, if we're going on the 22nd, I don't know if there's any event, MLOps event, whatever. Often it's nice to do, to release a new release at you know, KubeCon or whatever, right? I don't know if there's no KubeCon. I don't know if there's anything going on late July, but we may want to try to parallel in our release with some type of event or something that's already going on. Maybe the CNCF has something like that, but just keep your eyes open, right?
Yeah, so a lot of these MLOps communities, it's a global community, and they all have local chapters. So what might make sense, and so Amber and I are actually doing a talk at the Denver MLOps community on Kubeflow and how to get involved. So maybe what makes sense is Amber and I, and we work with whomever, we build a kind of community deck with our, you know, what's 1.9, what's Kubeflow, how to get involved. We keep it very community centered and just kind of open the door for people and give them a touch point. And then we create that deck, and then anyone in the community who's got a local MLOps group and wants to just get up and follow the script, we can really help get out there and evangelize Kubeflow in these local communities and see what traction we can get. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, look, I mean, putting those slides together and then giving them is very valuable for yourself, but being able to take a slide deck and present it actually amplifies us on a personal level throughout the world. So I think that's a great point, Jason, and we've seen so many people be successful, so many projects be successful with that. We've got some great stuff on 1.9. I think we just have to go back out there and beat the drum and do the tactical stuff. So if you're in San Francisco, if you're in London, you know, look for an event where you can present 1.9, you know, to a local event. You know, I think it'll help both the community and it will help yourself in different ways. So see if that's possible.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
Go
I
ahead.
just added the MLOps community Slack for people to join. And if anyone's interested in that community, I know a lot of the leaders, and I can point you to the local leadership as well, if that interests you, so you can have those conversations around Kubeflow.
Yeah, that would be that. I think that's a good track to get into. So, community. Thanks, Chase. All right. Thanks, everybody. I know we went long. Hopefully,
Thanks,
it's
everyone.
helpful today. All right. I'm going to close it out. Going once, unless somebody has something. Going twice. Have a good week.
Yes,
Oh, go ahead.
who can handle the approval of the calendar entry? Do you know someone
Dennis,
who can put this?
I think we can do it. I
Okay.
will let Logisim approve it. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Calendar entry. Got it. Thanks, Julius.